This video is for all fishermen, beginners and pros. There's going to be a lot of tips and tricks I bet you didn't even know. Okay, tip 1 is a really great worm trick to make your night crawlers more lively and plump and vivacious. And that's to keep them in the refrigerator year-round. And all you got to do is sprinkle some cornmeal on top once a week to feed them, and that keeps them alive longer. My worms last at least 6 months this way in the fridge, and they grow up to be some pretty big snakes for fishing. Okay, tip 2, if you're going for catfish, you got to try using chicken liver. It's one of their favorite baits, but it gets pretty messy and crumbles a bit, so problem solved. Just get some of Granny's old pantyhose and stick it in there. It's easy to run the hook through that way, and thus makes it easier to cast it out into the deeper holes where the biggest cats are lurking, waiting for you. Tip 3, bass fishermen, listen up. It's a really great trick to keep your worm and creature trailers nice and snug on your jig hook, and it's to glue the trailers on the night before with super glue. This prevents you from having to continually adjust your skirt up and down and lets you now throw it in the heaviest of cover and slop that the real biggins are hiding in. Try it and catch bigger bass every time, I guarantee it, or your money back. Tip 4, you always want to be fishing near cover and structure in the lake you fish by looking for submerged trees, lily pads, brush piles, docks, and rocks, because that's where fish tend to congregate. Of course, keeping cooler there, but also setting up their ambush pose for any prey that swims by, and it's lights out. Tip 5, it's time. Switch to braided line. It's very strong yet super sensitive. You'll feel the fish's movement every time. And the real beauty of braid is that it ties great knots, has zero stretch and zero memory, which is going to cut down on any line tangles or backlashes you get with mono. So that means more time fishing and less time untangling knots and being able to catch the biggest fish of your life right now. Tip 6, another great bait to catch every freshwater fish that swims is the live emerald shiner minnow, but they get fragile to handle and don't live all day. So the way to fix that, increase your time out on the water, is to get a good aerator, which pumps oxygen into the minnow water and will extend their life a couple hours. Also, you can add hydrogen peroxide in the minnow water, and that adds oxygen too. Lastly, put ice cubes in sealed baggies, and that will lower the water temperature. You do all 3 of these, and you will have fresh, lively minnows all day fishing. Tip 7 is to be quiet when you're out on the boat, or especially bank fishing, because fish have excellent hearing, and you can spook them pretty easily by clanking around all your fishing gear. Best example is, do you know any deer hunters? They don't even make a peep up in the tree stand, right? They don't even pass gas up there. They wouldn't dare. So it's the same thing when you're fishing. Don't do it down there either. Okay, tip 8, you got to be a knot tying pro. You never want your knot to fail you when you land the trophy of a lifetime. The easiest knot is the simple clinch knot, which is pretty strong and can catch you most fish. But we recommend the uni knot, which you're seeing here. You got to learn how to tie this one with your eyes closed, and you'll never get broken off by a huge catfish or a carp or a monster snapping turtle ever again. Tip 9, if you want to catch more fish than you do today, just switch all your lures out to blood red hooks. Proven science behind this, folks. A fish is more likely to aggressively strike baits with blood color hooks because it resembles a wounded or dying bait fish, and red is the color of blood and a bait fish's swimming gills, which will cause more predatory strikes every single time. Tip 10 is to chum the waters that you'll be fishing in, or it's also called prebaiting. So if it's legal to do this in the area where you live, it works really well. You just throw out pieces of the bait you'll be using into the water before you start fishing, and it'll bring them to the surface to explore. In fact, many seasoned carp anglers even chum areas of water for up to a week daily to get a proven feeding pattern established. Tip 11, you got to always know the water depth you're fishing in. So the quick and easy tip to do this if you're out on a boat with no depth finder is to put a heavy sinker onto a swivel, drop it over, and count 1,001, 1,002, etc. Every second is about a foot. So when she hits bottom, you'll know roughly what depth the water is in that particular spot. Tip 12 is a quick and easy organizing tip to use safety pins to store your different size swivels or even fishing hooks so you never have to fumble around looking for a swivel when you need one in the bottom of your tackle box. You can even clip it onto your fishing vest if you're river fishing, and that saves having to lug around a lot of gear out on the water. Tip 13 is to always bring 2 fishing rods with you every time you go fishing. If one of the tips breaks off or it gets dragged in on the bank by a huge catfish and you're in the middle of nowhere, you're going to have to stop fishing because you don't have another rod. So prior planning prevents poor performance. Always leave the house with at least 2 rods and you'll have more fun every time. Tip 14 is very similar to tip 13. You never want to leave the house without having a good big landing net with you, either on the boat fishing or when you're fishing from shore. Because if you get a real lunker on and you don't have a net and you just try to deadlift it overboard with just the rod, guess what's going to happen? Yep, it's going to snap your rod in two just like a pretzel. Tip 15, you always want to pay attention to the weather before you go out fishing. That's because if a cold front or any front is coming through, fish feed heavily just beforehand. And cloudy days are really great for fishing because fish prefer to feed in low light conditions. On bright sunny days, fish, of course, will be in deeper water looking for cooler temperatures and structure to hide in. Also remember your sunscreen or your raincoat, depending on whatever Mother Nature decides to throw at you that day. Tip 16, just like with the last point, always have your UV sunglasses with you when you go fishing. They not only protect your eyes from harmful sun rays, they also substantially cut down on water glare when you're fishing, and a good pair will let you see the fish and structure in the water if it's halfway clear. Okay, for tip 17, you've probably heard by now that the best times to go fishing and catch more fish is at dawn and early morning and at dusk or even nighttime for many fish like catfish and others. Like we said earlier, fish prefer feeding more aggressively in low light conditions, and many fish come into the shallows in evening after dusk to begin feeding in the shallower, cooler water. Tip 18, match the hatch. You've probably heard that by now already, right? Or at least you should have, and that is to match the lure and bait colors you're using to the actual forage and bait fish colors present in that lake that you're fishing. You gotta feed the fish what they're used to seeing and eating every day, and you gotta make sure your baits look natural and lifelike to them to get more bites. You can also turn over rocks there and see the colors of bugs and insects, and then you just use trailers and jigs in those colors. Tip 19, before you ever make a cast of your fishing rod, make sure that your rod eyes are straight and aligned at all times. Else, you're going to get a tangled bird's nest in your spool every time you cast. Also, make sure you have enough braided line on the spool before you go fishing in case you get a big fish that runs and he can run your spool out. Just don't let that happen to you. Okay, tip 20, the grand finale. Hope you're still watching. You got a lot of good tips out of this that you can start using right away to catch more fish. One way to do that is to take old pieces of dead minnows and bait fish chunks, grind them up into pieces, freeze them into ice cubes. Then you drop the cubes down into various spots, let them dissolve, and begin casting into those spots. And you will begin catching more fish, I promise you. Thanks for watching, folks. We'll see you out on the water. Good luck to you always. Tight lines. Go fishing every day of the week. Okay, folks, thanks for watching. Please like this video, hit the subscribe button before you leave, and don't forget to enable your bell notifications so you never miss another great video coming your way.